Hi, everybody. I wanted to talk to you a little bit about using sources in your paper. And when you bring in the borrowed information, the information that you've summarized in your annotated bibliography, you have to give credit to the source. This is called source attribution. Attribution is the act of crediting a work or idea to a specific author or person, researcher, artist, whoever it is that actually had the idea or did the work. So even if you take published information and put it in your own words, that's called a paraphrase, you still have to document it as borrowed information, because even though you used your own words, it wasn't your idea, it wasn't your work. So, especially some special clues that you would need to give source attribution is if you're borrowing someone's statistics or research findings, but really even an original idea. If it wasn't your idea, you've got to credit the author. I do encourage you to do more paraphrasing than direct quotation, because direct quotation really should be reserved for special wording when an idea is phrased so eloquently, so strongly, that to put it in your own words diminishes it somehow. And that happens with literature quite often, but it doesn't really happen with general topics. You're far better to paraphrase. But back to this idea of giving an attribution, crediting the source of the information. There are two basic methods. If you have a source that has page numbers, you can use something called an in-text note. It's parentheses, and in MLA, an in-text note has the author's last name and a number that refers to the page number. So the MLA note pattern is name space number, with that number being the page number. Now, I know some of you are doing APA papers in other classes. APA also uses the parenthetical notes, but it's a little different. It will have the author's name, a comma. APA uses a comma, MLA does not. And APA will have a year, but that year refers to the date of publication, the publication year. So one more time, MLA, name, space, number, with the number referring to the page number, and then a period at the very end. That's an in-text note. That's one way to attribute sources if you have page numbers. But more often, we don't have page numbers because we have an electronic source. So if you don't have a page number, it's better to do something called a global reference. And all that means is that you mention the author's name in the sentence. If the author's last name is Shaw, you could say, according to Shaw, 27% of Americans, whatever, Shaw argues that this rate will continue to grow. Those are some examples of global references where you credit the source, you give the attribution just by mentioning the author's name in the sentence. In either one of those methods, the in-text note or the global reference in the sentence, if you don't have an author, if the source you're working with doesn't have an author, then you use a form of the title in your attribution. Sometimes titles can get long, and so if you're dealing with a long title, you need to find a way to shorten it. But here's kind of the final check of documentation. Every source that's mentioned within your paper must have the full citation at the end. This is called the works cited. It's the full publishing information that allows your reader to get back to the original publication that you saw. So, and so that has to go both ways. Every source that you mention in the paper should be listed on the works cited, and every source that's listed on the works cited should be mentioned in the paper. So this is kind of an overview of how to document borrowed information, the sources that you found and wrote your annotated bibliography entries on, how to give credit and show in your essay which piece of information came from which source. And there are two methods of attribution: the in-text notation and the global reference. So I hope this helps you, because this is a very important aspect of research.